struggle sometimes, like everyone else, when I have an extra burden of guilt whenever I want to just have any kind of marginal enjoyment. Right? Like if I just want to have a cocktail or I want to eat some birthday cake, which I know is not going to hurt me and it's not, it's not going to throw me off. But I really struggle with that. I feel like I'm letting the whole world down. And I know that it's not, and it's ridiculous, and you shouldn't be that. Being that disciplined actually is not sustainable over a long period of time. I think that, like a lot of people listening to this podcast, I'm very hard on myself. I'm my own worst enemy sometimes, and I have an insatiable appetite to do what I'm doing. And I think that if I wasn't so hard on myself, I probably would find it a lot easier.
Thank you so much.
You're
Everybody
welcome.
listening to this should go check out 10x Health. Much of the information you've discussed here lives within that ecosystem, and your Instagram and your website and those channels, which I've explored, in depth, are incredible resources to understand how to start your journey to living a more healthy life. And that's everything that you espouse. You're incredible, Gary. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's very, very rare that I find someone online, I then DM them, and I nagged you on DM for a couple of months to get you here. But I think everybody listening to this can understand why. You're doing incredible work, incredibly important work, and an incredibly important time to shift the narrative. And as I said to you, I think before we start recording or in an interval, I realised that this is literally just in the journey and the mission that you're on.
Yeah.
That's so clear to me.
Thank you. I feel the same way.
I've now been a Huel drinker for about 4 years, roughly. So much so that I ended up investing in the company, and I play a role on the board of the company, but they also very kindly sponsor this podcast. And to be honest, I've never said this before, but Huel believed in this podcast before anybody else. The CEO, Julian, told me before we even launched the podcast how successful it would be and that Huel would back it. And I absolutely have a huge amount of gratitude for them for that support, but an even greater sense of gratitude for the fact that they've helped me stay nutritionally complete throughout the chaos and hecticness of a tremendously busy business schedule. So if you haven't tried out Huel, which I hope most of you have at least given it a go by now, try it out. It's a meaningful way to try and stay nutritionally on course if you have a hectic, busy schedule. And let me know what you think. Send me a tweet and a DM, tag me. Let me know what you think.
When you're struggling with sleep in the middle of the night and you're wide awake, in the last hour before bed, try this experiment.
I'm sold.
Matthew Walker,
neuroscientist and best-selling author,
and one of the world's leading researchers in sleep science.
It's going to blow your mind.
The sleep loss epidemic shaped by this thing called the modern world. What society wants is that you're either producing or you're consuming. In fact, the CEO of Netflix, his statement was that we are to commit war against sleep. We have this mentality in business. Less sleep equals more productivity. That is just not true. Insufficient sleep costs most nations about $411 billion.
Jeez.
Your rates of obesity, cardiovascular disease, mental health conditions, all of these things, that isn't bad enough. If you're not getting sufficient sleep, then 60% of all of the weight that you lose will come from lean muscle mass and not fat.
Not the muscle. How did you redesign society to help us to sleep better?
So first I would...
It feels like caffeine is a miracle drug with no apparent cost. Was I wrong or was I right?
Wrong. Caffeine will hurt your sleep in 3 ways most people are not aware of. So if you have a cup of coffee at midday, what happens is that...
Before we get into this episode, just wanted to say thank you, first and foremost, for being part of this community. The team here at the Like Dat CEO is now almost 30 people, and that's literally because you watch and you subscribe and you leave comments and you like the videos. That this show's been able to grow. It's the greatest honor of my life to sit here with these incredible people and just selfishly ask them questions that I'm pondering over or worrying about in my life. But this is just the beginning for the Diary of a CEO. We've got big, big plans to scale this show to every corner of the world and to diversify our guest selection. And that's enabled by you, by something that you guys do, which is to watch. So if there's one thing you could do to help this show and to help us continue to do what we do, it's just to hit the subscribe button. If you like this show, if you like what we do here, if you watch these episodes, please just hit that subscribe button. It means the world. Matt, I have spent the longest time trying to sit down with you on this podcast. I'm very, very happy to spend some time with you today. And that is because your work is now world renowned, and it's very, very important work. But as is the case with all research systems, I wanted to start by asking you, in your view, what is it you do, and why is it so important in your mind that you do it?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me here and having this conversation. It's an incredible privilege to sit here. Why do I do what I do, and why do I think it's important? The single most effective thing that you can do to reset your brain and body health. And I don't say that flippantly. It's not as though I'm dismissing exercise or diet. Those two things are absolutely critical. But if I were to take you, the individual, and deprive you of exercise for a day, deprive you of food for a day, deprive you of water for a day, or deprive you of sleep for a day, 24 hours, and I were to map your brain and body impairments, it's not even a competition. That one night of lost sleep, it dwarfs, the only thing I lose out against is oxygen. If I deprive you oxygen, you're going to pop out of existence a little bit quicker than you will with a lack of sleep. So sleep, to me, I think, is the elixir of life. It is your life support system, and as best we can tell, I would argue it's Mother Nature's best effort yet at immortality. And so in that regard, that's why I look across all of the studies and all of the data. It's so compelling to me. And part of the reason I haven't done a good job, but I've tried to offer some recognition of reuniting humanity with the sleep that it's so bereft of, is because it does appear that there is a global sleep loss epidemic. Numbers, people struggling so desperately with their sleep. So we have all of this knowledge, this incredible knowledge of sleep and how important it is, and it's a perfect storm colliding with this great depression in modern society. And for that reason, I just felt as though, what can we do to try to help offer this voice and science? And I am but a scientist, and I stand on the shoulders of all of my colleagues, all of these giants in the field. I'm just a researcher, so it's a little bit about, I guess, why.
If I was to try and define your sort of the application of some kind of narrow label, if I was to try and define what your title is.
So I'm just a professor of neuroscience at Berkeley. I am not a medical doctor, just FYI for all of the things that we will talk about in this conversation. So I'm just a PhD.
Just a PhD.
Yeah.
That's incredibly humble of you, but I would assert that you're, without a shadow of a doubt, the leading author, scientist, commentator